Hello and welcome here to TalkFCB, and welcome back here to the channel, guys. And having been now appointed as the official Barcelona coach, what exactly can Ronald Koeman bring? In today's video, we are going to be discussing that in its entirety in what is going to be a journey through Koeman's 20-year managerial career. He's coached 10 clubs stemming across 4 different countries, along with, of course, his most recent job in charge of the Dutch national team. And as you'll be finding out along the way, Koeman has shown signs of certain promise. He's had good moments, he's had bad moments too, and there will be a few warning signs ahead of his time at Barça. But now the deal is done. Now the deal is complete. We've got to discuss every avenue of what Koeman can bring. So sit back, try to relax if you can, as we delve deep into the managerial career of Barcelona legend Ronald Koeman. Because we start at the very beginning, back in the year 2000, when I'm sure they were much simpler times, because Ronald Koeman actually left his job as the assistant coach to none other than Louis van Gaal at Barcelona. So he has worked here in the past. He was Barca's assistant there in the late 1990s. But in the year 2000, like I say, he did make the big step up to become a coach in his own right, which came there in his home country with Eredivisie club Vitesse, where he did impress during a 2-year spell at the club before making what was at the time a big early step up to the biggest club in the Netherlands, Dutch giants Ajax. And Ajax was certainly a place where Ronald Koeman certainly succeeded. One of the brightest moments, in fact, of his entire managerial career, especially there in his first 2 seasons at the club. He won 2 Eredivisie titles during what was the longest spell of his entire managerial career, the time there that he spent with Ajax. It lasted over 3 years, and statistically, like I say, it was his best coaching spell. He had the most points per game in that tie, the most goals, despite the fact there that he did end up resigning towards the end, which you will find is quite a theme with Koeman, although that didn't dampen his overall positive time in Amsterdam. What then followed his time in Ajax was a pretty short stint in Portugal with Benfica, with his team, to be fair, struggling domestically, finishing 3rd in the league, although it has to be said that Koeman's Benfica did put in some very, very good Champions League performances, beating some of the big English teams along the way that season, although he did end up just the 1 campaign in Portugal before he returned to his native Netherlands with PSV. And it was back in the Eredivisie where once again Koeman did find success, in particular in his first season, winning the Eredivisie title once again. Although despite his success in Vitesse, in Ajax, and also with PSV, his time with AZ Alkmaar in Eredivisie, that didn't exactly go so well. He actually ended up taking over Louis van Gaal's title-winning team at the time, but after an extended run of poor form, he left his position of coach of Alkmaar after just 157 days. He then took charge of Feyenoord, where I think at that time in his career it was a few disappointments. We're going to come on to one of the major ones in just a moment's time. He then took charge of Feyenoord, like I say, and I think he was really in need of a pick-me-up to really enjoy some success again, to feel good as a coach, and I think he enjoyed there a much more positive spell. 3 very, very steady seasons, so much so that in that time, Ronald Koeman, for the first time, attracted some serious attention from the Premier League, which is where, of course, he'd make that next step. Because starting first with Southampton, where actually again, it's very, very funny how all of these paths seem to cross at different points, because Koeman actually replaced Maurizio Pochettino when he came in at Southampton, and he did very, very well there, guiding Southampton to their highest ever league finish, qualifying for the Europa League. And he also harnessed the quality, let's not forget, at the time, with the likes of Sadio Mane, also Dusan Tadic, and of course Virgil van Dijk. All of those players were under Koeman's control at Southampton, and his time on the South Coast certainly was a success. So much so that Koeman's impressive spell with Southampton earned him a move to Everton, where again, he did start very, very promisingly. A good league finish there, helping Everton to qualify again for the Europa League in his first season. However, once again, it does tail off and things went rather sour rather quickly at Everton, coinciding, of course, with their loss of Romelu Lukaku, who went to Manchester United. Koeman never really replaced those goals, and after a bad start to the season, which left Everton in the relegation zone, Koeman was sacked in October, and his time in the Premier League came to an end. And I know many people will actually point towards that poor second season with Everton as a clear negative there on Koeman's CV, but I just want to say, in his defence, yes, that second season was absolutely disastrous. There's no getting away from that, and Koeman himself knows that. But I do want to say, Everton, it is a tough place to go, because we've seen before him the same sort of situation with Roberto Martinez, now coach, of course, of Belgium. He's also been linked to Barcelona in the past. He started very, very well at Everton, but again, fell away quickly. We've even seen it there with Marco Silva, another highly rated coach, failed at Everton, and even now with Carlo Ancelotti. Koeman wasn't the first coach, and he won't be the last either, to fail to get it right at Everton. But also, to be fair, you could easily say the same thing about Barcelona. But aside from all of those spells, which of course are all important when analysing exactly what Koeman could bring to Barcelona, there's one particular spell that I have to focus on, and I want to bring you in some detail here, because I think Koeman's time in La Liga with Valencia brings about both positive and certainly negative conclusions. Because we return now to 2007, when Koeman left his job at PSV to make the step to La Liga for the very first time as a coach, being appointed as coach of Valencia. And although Koeman, to be fair, did steer Valencia to a Copa del Rey title, which was a big, big moment for them as a club, it was a frankly dreadful league campaign, though, that eventually saw Koeman fired, because when Koeman came into the club at Valencia, they were actually sitting there in third place, just 5 points off the top of the league. But when he left, they were battling relegation. It was a dreadful, dreadful campaign for them, with Koeman achieving just 18 La Liga points from the 66 which were available, and it meant that he was in charge of Valencia for just 168 days, and it will go down undoubtedly as one of the worst, if not the worst period of Koeman's managerial career. But what I also want to say about this is, although that was a disaster, there's no getting around that. He did perform poorly at Valencia, but I do just want to say, number one, much like Quique Setién at Barcelona, Koeman didn't have a pre-season. He was thrown into Valencia mid-season, which is, again, never an easy club to manage. But I also want to say, one of his biggest problems there was with the egos. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way, because one of the first things that Koeman did upon being appointed as the Valencia coach was actually drop 3 of the club's most experienced players, which obviously in Valencia, it didn't go down well. The dressing room very, very quickly turned against Koeman, and it all ended very, very badly. But it just shows he wasn't afraid to do that. Going into a club, going into something completely new, he was happy there to drop a few big names. And that for us at Barcelona right now, that's definitely something that we can cling on to. But it just goes to show you need the support. At Valencia, Koeman went in there, he did that, the dressing room rebelled, he didn't have the support and the strength there from the Valencia hierarchy, and it just goes to show he will need the board to have a bit of a backbone, a bit of support. Will he get that at Barcelona? That's the question. And I think when you break down there Koeman's time in charge of all of those clubs across his managerial career, what you will notice is he doesn't actually stay all that long. Certainly his spells there at a number of those clubs have been for a very short space of time, which tells me there that Koeman wouldn't exactly be somebody maybe for the long term. But given our situation, given the elections that very much so are coming, maybe that's not such a bad thing, because Koeman here won't have to be a long-term success. What we need right now is somebody to come in and ultimately make some changes, make some drastic changes, and enforce those as soon as they arrive. And I do think that when you look at his most recent venture, one of the most successful periods of his managerial career, his time with the Dutch national team, that also can give us confidence. Because for me, the past 2.5 years there that Koeman has been in charge of the Netherlands is not just about the fact they have been very, very successful, because they have. They've not only comfortably qualified for Euro 2020, having beaten the world champions Germany along the way in their group. They also, of course, reached the Nations League final, narrowly lost out to that title to Portugal. And all of that is all very good. He was successful there. He's gotten them playing some good football and getting some good results. But for me, it's actually about the fact there when he went in to the Netherlands they are a broken team. They were well and truly on the floor in terms of their confidence. Because let's remember, they just suffered, that team, the embarrassment of missing out on the 2018 World Cup, which for the Netherlands, that's unheard of. They go to major tournaments. They don't miss out. They do not sit and watch it at home. But somehow, they ended up in that mess. Now that's interesting, that Koeman there was able to go into that team, to rebuild it, to work from within, to recapture that confidence, because believe me, he's got a massive job at Barcelona. He's got to go in here and repair so much. I don't know personally if just the coach just changing that is going to be enough, as we all know. But what we have seen from Koeman throughout his career is inconsistency. He's had good spells, he's had bad spells. Like I say, I don't think he's necessarily somebody for the long term. But in terms of that initial impact, he does seem to have the leadership, the mentality. He obviously knows the club. He was a legend here, and I mean legend, as a player. And for that reason, coming in, providing he gets that support, providing the board around him actually say, you know what, there's that authority. We will back you to do what you need to do to bring this squad back to its feet. Because he does have the mentality to help this team. But of course, guys, there is going to be plenty more discussion on Ronald Koeman, what he can bring to the club, and of course the overhaul that we expect to see at Barca this summer in terms of the playing squad. We're also going to be talking in the near future about Koeman's tactics. When he's presented, we're going to be talking there about what he wants to bring to the club. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of big decisions that are going to have to be made and will be made over the next few weeks, ahead, of course, of the new La Liga season, which is less than a month away. Let me know your thoughts on Ronald Koeman. Initially, what do you expect? What are you hoping for? Where are your expectations at? I've said before that my expectations personally will be much, much lower than usual. I think it's going to be tough for him coming into this kind of job, the big challenge that really surrounds him. But what an opportunity for him, if, and it is an if, he can get it right. I will see you soon, guys, with plenty more content to come. Thanks again for all of your support and for watching. I will see you soon. But until next time, as always, Visca el Barça.